Okay, so my name is Raven, and for my project, I did my presentation on the Oneida. Um, okay, sorry, I was just trying to figure out how to share my screen. Okay, okay, so I did mine on the Oneida. Um, their name also stands for People of the Standing Stone, which I thought was pretty interesting. So, a little bit about their history. We're going to start with where they were originally from. They were actually from like upper New York, like by Syracuse. Um, and they lived on about 6 million acres of land, which is, if you can see my mouse, it's this like purple area right here. That was all of theirs. Um, and then the rest of these over here are the other four out of the five founding nations of the Iroquois Confederation. Um, so how did they come to Wisconsin? So starting in 1824, they started slowly coming into Wisconsin, um, in hopes that like all the pressures they felt with the Europeans that were moving into New York, they were hoping that um those like would go away. So they came to small groups. Um, and the ones that didn't come to Wisconsin actually went into Canada. Um, and but today, the Oneida Reservation that we have in Wisconsin is over over kind of by Green Bay. It's in the Brown and oh, go back. In Brown and Ottawatomie counties. I obviously don't know what I'm doing. But if you look at the picture on the bottom, you can kind of see if you follow the red line, um, the route that they took. And they actually went through a couple of the Great Lakes to get over to the Green Bay area. Um, so how did they live? Um, Up until about the 1840s, they would just build their homes out of logs, as you can see down in this picture here. Um, Shortly after the 1840s is when they started building like framed homes, like how we have them now. Um, it was very gender-based division of living. So like women were responsible for the garden and the housework and cooking, and the men hunted and fished and dealt with the government and stuff like that. So it was very like gender-based, um, when it came to that. They also mainly ate beans, squash, corn, and anything that they were able to get from like hunting and fishing and other like wild like picking of like berries and stuff like that. Um, the beans, squash, and corn were actually, I think, if I remember correctly, they called it the Three Sisters. Because that was those three things were like the main like the main things that they had at all times. So that was like mainly what they ate. Um, and there's actually a Three Sisters soup that I I actually had to make it for another class last semester, and it was actually a very good soup. I would not think that if you put all those things together in a soup that they would taste good, but I really enjoyed it. So their first interactions with the American settlers, um, so the Oneida were actually one of the first allies to the American colonists. At first, they really weren't on board with helping them. Um, they just kind of wanted to remain neutral between the whole um, Revolutionary War between the American colonists and Great Britain. Um, but shortly, they realized that they couldn't just remain neutral. So they did end up siding with the American colonists because they believed in their idea of freedom. Sorry if you can hear my dogs. Um, they agreed with their like ideas of freedom and stuff like that. Um, the Oneida also provided troops to the American colonists and food as well to help them get through the winter because um, without the help of the Oneida, they would not, like the American colonists wouldn't have made it through the winter because they didn't really know how to do it. But they were able to get help from them. And then after the Revolutionary War, George Washington actually signed a treaty into place that helped protect the Oneida tribe and actually helped give them their own land back because a lot of it was taken by the American colonists. So their interactions with the French and the British, their first interaction that they had, sorry, was in the early 1600s. So the French, the British, and the Dutch were all fighting for control of the fur trade in North America at the time. But the Oneida actually ended up siding with the British and the French. Uh, they ended up siding with the British and the French during this. Um, so they were on good terms for a while. So their land, I don't really want to say progression because it didn't really get better. It just kind of got worse. So when they were first in New York, they had about 6 million acres of land, like I said in the beginning of the presentation. But once the colonists came, their land shrunk down to just 4,500 acres, which is quite drastic. But the Treaty of 1838 granted them about 65,000 acres in northeast Wisconsin, which is around the Green Bay area where they are now. And today they still have roughly about the same amount of land, and it is still federally protected land. So right here, you can see this isn't like a great picture, but it just kind of shows you roughly where and how big it looks on a map. So the revitalization programs, the only one I found for the Oneida tribe was the Oneida Language Revitalization Program. And it's just a program that came about in the 1930s. And it basically has the elders of the tribe write down their history and their language so that way it isn't gone because the Oneida language is actually an endangered language. So they're trying to keep as much of it as they possibly can before um, it's all gone. And what do their lives look like now? They look very similar. Sorry, he's needy. Uh, they look very similar to yours and mine. Um, they can have any job they want. It doesn't, there are no gender roles, um, labor division like there was. Many of them actually run their own businesses. They don't have to live on the reservation. I know many of them do and many of them don't. It's just really up to them. There's no law saying that they have to. And they do still practice their own beliefs and traditions. Um, they still do that consistently. That hasn't really stopped. And then this is just the symbol of the sovereign Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. And I think that is all I have. I'm not entirely sure how to use Zoom. Okay. Okay. Well, that is all I have for the Oneida Nation presentation. Oh, I found the button. Okay. That is all I have. I hope you learned a little bit about the Oneida tribe. I know I definitely learned a lot more things than I previously knew. A lot of them very interesting and surprising. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.